JP and Scott Yates are crusaders locked in a vicious debate. A debate that includes challenging each other's research, questioning one another's motives, accusations, threats of ruin. What is this vicious battle that they are fighting over? What is it that has brought them to blows with each other? Nothing less than the time change, right? Last Sunday, we fell back. We got an extra hour of sleep. That was great for a few days. It seems like it dissipates very quickly, right? In the spring, they're going to take that hour back. They're going to rip it back out of our lives. We're all going to come up an hour short of sleep. And these two men have decided that this is a great travesty. They are at odds, both in agreement that time change is a bad idea. Their battle is not about that. Their battle is over whether we should be on daylight savings time all the time or whether we should be on standard time all the time, right? Which way should it be? Now, obviously, anybody who knows anything knows that daylight standard time is the way to go. I'm all for eliminating the time change and all against standard time. So in that regard, I'm on the side of, one of these guys. But this battle began when one of them challenged the other on social media, and the other responded defensively and with equal vigor and vim and accusation and condemnation. And then there was a disputed late-night phone call between them that erupted into now this fight that kind of goes unnoticed most of the year until time change happens again, and then it resurfaces. David Prerau, which I'm sure I'm massacring his last name, but he's an expert on this subject. He's actually written a book on this very important issue. And his conclusion from his studies is that both of them are right. That there are advantages both to daylight savings time and to standard time. And thus, the current status quo is actually the best case scenario. Like we're getting the best of both worlds by time change. And my question is, why not? Why not have a vicious debate over time change, right? Polarization is the operation modem of the hour, right? It's just the way everything is. We're at opposite ends of the spectrum in our politics, and we have red states and blue states, and we have vaxxers and anti-vaxxers, and you name it. We're kind of at the opposite ends of the spectrum on just about everything. Disagreements digress into accusations and condemnation and vows, right? Countless friendships have been ended. Numerous families have been divided about all different kinds of things. It's a macrocosm and a microcosm of our humanity. It's being played out in the biggest ways and in the smallest venues because of this simple fact. We all think we're right. Right? We all think we're right. I've said this many times. I'll say it again and again and again. I think I'm right. I always think I'm right. If I thought I was wrong, I would think differently and then I would be right. We all think we're right. And here's the second thing that I know for sure. We're not all right. Because some of you disagree with me and I'm always right. So you must be wrong. Thank you, Danny, for appreciating the truth, not my humor, the truth, as I speak it. Right? None of us are all right. And because we're not all right, and because we think we're all right, we have collisions in our lives, and these collisions that we have, they don't always go well. They often don't go well at all. Our personalities get in the way when our paths cross, when these collisions happen. And some of us are aggressive and assertive and come forth strongly with our opinions. And some of us are more passive and hold back. And so aggressive people say things that they probably shouldn't say. And passive people don't say things that they probably should say. And then some of us are passive aggressive and we say things with a chuckle that lands with a sledgehammer, right? Our personalities get in the way. And then we have experiences that factor into our disagreements. And those experiences shape our perspectives on things. And we have hopes and fears and doubts and insecurities that all factor into the things that we believe and the ways that they come together. Jesus, teacher, teach us how to live together in a world where nobody's perfect. Jesus, teach us how to live together in a world where everybody thinks they're right, but none of us are always right. We looked at Matthew chapter 18 last week, one of Jesus' lessons to his disciples about greatness. And the passage is beginning, if you want to be great, right? If you want to be great, become a servant of all. Like a child. Become like a child who's not trying to manipulate relationships and pick and choose who they'll connect with so that they can advance their kingdom, their cause. Isn't trying to advance a kingdom or a cause, but surrendering to God's kingdom. So we're going to continue. The passage we're going to be looking at this morning is a passage that goes this further along in that. And it's really, okay, in this world where we're all now battling to become the best servants with each other, sometimes even our service, we still collide. And so the question is asked, when a brother or sister sins against you, what are you to do? Well, first of all, there's just a couple things. Right? It says when a brother or sister, Matthew chapter 18, verse 15, when a brother or sister sins against you. To sin is to, literally, the word that is used here is to miss the mark. When a brother or sister misses the mark in their relationship with you, in that missing the mark, that you're hurt in some way, shape, or form. And brother or sister insinuates that this is not just some random stranger out there, right? When someone you know, someone you're in a relationship, Jesus is talking with his disciples. He's talking with his followers. He says, when one of you sins against each other, and he's going to lay out a plan. I just want to say, because we're talking about family, the life that Jesus is talking about is the life that we were meant for. It's the kingdom that's coming. And so those things actually have broad implications and broad application even to life outside that kingdom. What I mean to say is this will work even if it's not in the church. What Jesus says is actually great operational procedures for just about everything. You could use this to write a conflict resolution policy for almost any situation. Jesus continues, right? When a brother or sister sins against you, step one, if a believer hurts you, go and tell them. Work it out between the two of you. This is from Eugene Peterson's translation of the Message. If they listen, you've made a friend. If a brother or sister hurts you, go and talk to them. In 30 years in being in ministry, and 35 years, almost 35 years of marriage and parenting, and I mean all kinds of scenarios. I can like so many disagreements, so many disputes would end just with step one. Right? If the person who was involved, the person who was hurt, would go and talk to the person who's hurt them instead of their neighbor and their friend and the friend of this friend, so that they can tell them that they're hurt without actually dealing with them and kind of spread out the dysfunction and the disease. Right? If we would just go and talk to the person, right? So often it was just a misunderstanding. It was just a nuance in the words or our tone or something. And just when we talk to each other, it's like, oh, that's what you meant. I thought you were saying this, or I felt like this. And it's in right there, right? Step one, just go and probably 85% we wipe off the slate, right? We don't even have to go another step. But step two, if they won't listen, take one or two others along with you, so that the presence of witnesses will keep things honest and try again. Right? You go and you talk to them, and you don't come to a resolution. You can't work it out. Find somebody else to go with you. And Eugene Peterson picks this up greatly in his translation, right? The reason to have somebody else is not so you can double your hit. It's so that you can have somebody else to help you navigate the conversation, help you hear each other, help you see it from a different perspective, help you come to an understanding to work out the problem. Take one or two others with you. If you take one or two others now and you still, they're in agreement that, hey, there's a problem here that needs to be addressed, the person is not listening to the problem, the next step then, right, taking it up to the next level, is if they won't listen, and there's an agreement there's a problem. It says, he's talking to brothers and sisters, right? He's talking to the family God. Tell the church. Tell the church. Now, I guess you could interpret this to mean, get a megaphone and go out and stand on the front stoop of the church as people are walking in the morning and just say, Danny Bass is it, right? Did this to me and it hurt my feelings. And my two brothers, we went and talked to him and we couldn't work it out. So you all need to know that Danny Bass needs to repent of his many sins, right? How about in our church, in our polity, we have a governance and we have elders. Take it to the elders. Take it to the leaders of the church and address the issue. And try and resolve it. And then step 4 in Jesus' plan, right? And again, if you're applying this broadly, step 3 might be like the supervisor, if it's at work, you're a colleague and then a supervisor. And taking it up. And then the 4th step, it says, if that doesn't work, treat them as a tax collector or a sinner. Which, right, could mean one of two things. Tax collectors or sinners in Jesus' day, they were outcasts. They were right, the sidelines of society, and you were supposed to ignore them and treat them poorly and hate them and despise them. But Jesus is telling the story, and Jesus was notorious for treating tax collectors and sinners fairly generously, right? I mean, they actually accused him of fraternizing with tax collectors and sinners. So, in the message, if they won't listen to the church, you'll have to start over from scratch. Confront them with the need for repentance and offer again God's forgiving love. 4-step process. If a brother hurts your feelings, a sister hurts your feelings, go to them, talk to them. It doesn't work. Take one or two others. Take it up to the next level. And if that doesn't work, begin again with the gospel of repentance and God's love and grace and forgiveness and prayer and hoping that leads to a change of heart and a reconciliation. And so Jesus lays out this great plan for resolving these conflicts that happen when we all think we're right and we hurt each other's feelings. And Peter steps in at this point with a question. Peter says, Jesus, okay, I get it. We're supposed to work these things out. How many times do I have to do this with my brother or sister when they hurt me? How many times do I have to forgive them? How many times do we have to go through this 4-step process, Jesus? How many times? 7 times? Jesus, I pointed this out a few weeks ago, rarely gives a direct answer to any question. This one he does. He says, no, Peter, not 7 times. It's unclear. This can be translated either 77 times or 7 times 70. Right? He says to Peter, Peter's saying 7 times, which he thought was like he was being very generous because 4 times was the industry standard. Right? That was kind of like everyone, you were expected to forgive 4 times. So he's raising the bar. Not 4 times, how about 7 times? Jesus says, no. 77 or 70 times 7 times. At which point Jesus does what often Jesus does. He launches into a story. And I'm going to read this story to you. This is from Matthew chapter 18, verse 25. It says, the kingdom of heaven. We've been talking a lot about the kingdom of heaven, haven't we? Can be compared to a king who decided to bring his accounts up to date with servants who had borrowed money from him. In the process, one of his debtors was brought in who owed him millions of dollars. He couldn't pay, so the master ordered that he be sold along with his wife, his children, and everything he owned to pay the debt. Now, this was a first century mode of debt collection, which I think would make you like a little more careful about, am I really going to blow the house on, the bank on Christmas this year and run everything of it if I know that if I can't pay the bill, they're going to take my wife and kids, right? So this is how they did things. The man fell down at his master's feet and begged him, please be patient with me and I will pay it all. Then his master was filled with pity for him and he released him and forgave his debt. But when the man left the king, he went to a fellow servant who owed him a few $1,000s. He grabbed him by the throat and demanded instant payment. His fellow servant fell down before him and begged for a little more time. Be patient with me and I will pay it, he pleaded. But his creditor wouldn't wait. He had the man arrested and put in prison until the debt could be paid in full. When some of the other servants saw this, they were very, very upset. They went to the king and told him everything that had happened. Then the king called in the man he had forgiven and said, you evil servant, I forgave you this tremendous debt because you pleaded with me. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant just as I had mercy on you? Then the angry king sent the man to prison to be tortured until he had paid the entire debt. Jesus finishes, that's what my heavenly Father will do to you if you refuse to forgive your brothers and sisters from your heart. Now, Jesus' parables are not always allegories, right? It's not always a one-to-one connection between the characters, and right? They're often metaphors or similes. This one has some allegorical connections, right? Jesus is talking about, he says, the kingdom of heaven is like a king. So, similarly then, he's talking about if the kingdom of heaven is like a king, the king in the story is the king of the kingdom of heaven, which would be God. And the person asking the question is Peter. And so presumably, right, he's saying, how many times do I have to forgive the person who has sinned against me? That Peter is the guy in the story who has been forgiven, asking now how much he has to forgive. And we're all in Peter's boat, is the implication of the story. How many times must I forgive? How many times must you forgive? And the short answer, right, if you just go back to the beginning, the short answer is a lot. A lot of times. 7 times, 70 times. A lot. The long answer, which is the story that follows, and the moral to the story that Jesus tells, is this. Not nearly as many times as you've been forgiven. How many times must I forgive? Peter, not nearly as many times as you've been forgiven. There are a lot of obstacles to forgiveness. Forgiveness, by its very definition, a person who you're forgiving doesn't deserve to be forgiven. If they deserved it, they would have earned it, right? They don't deserve to be forgiven. There's a sense in which I've been wronged, and I want the person who's wronged me to feel the hurt of it. I want them to pay for what they did. And maybe if we're even being generous in that, and we don't really want them we don't want to get even with them, we want them at least to learn a lesson from the hurt that they've caused us. Right? So I don't want vengeance. I just want them to learn a lesson. So I can't let them off the hook too easy. And there are a lot of actually good reasons to forgive. That when we don't forgive, that oftentimes bitterness and resentment builds inside of us, even hatred. And it's been all kinds of science that has proven that those kinds of things cause physical harm to our bodies, stress, anxiety, depression from unforgiveness that leads to other physical implications. Unforgiveness often hurts us far more than the person who has hurt us. Unforgiveness, or forgiving others, it's the only way to break the cycle of pain and hurt, right? If you hurt me and I don't forgive you, then I try to hurt you back and you won't forgive me, and then I hurt you, right? And we just go, that's kind of the way that gangs and nations work. It's like, you killed my friend, I'm going to kill your friend, who's going to kill my friend, and go back and forth, and we do this on every level. Not always murder, sometimes angry words and unkindness. And forgiveness is the only way to break the cycle. There are lots of good reasons and lots of hard reasons to forgive. But Jesus kind of breaks that, just kind of sets that all aside in this story and just makes one straightforward case. I forgave your debt. Shouldn't you also have mercy on the fellow servant, just as I had mercy on you? You've been forgiven much, far more than you're being asked to forgive. Shouldn't you then also extend that forgiveness to the person who has harmed you? Now, it's a pretty simple equation, but I think it begs some questions, right? The first one is, okay, well, if the reason for our forgiveness of others is how much we've been forgiven, how much have we been forgiven? And then how much am I being asked to forgive? And if you do the math and you decide, you know what, I haven't been forgiven as much as I'm being asked, as much as I'm being asked to forgive, Jesus' formula actually falls apart, right? It's based on the fact that I've been given a lot and I'm being forgiven a lot and I'm being asked to forgive. Aren't you following me? Right? If it's not more than what we're being asked to forgive, Jesus' question, or his story, it doesn't work. So how much am I being asked to forgive? Some of us have a long list of grievances, perceived and real. And our lives are full of heartache and heartbreak because we encounter people who think we're right when we think we're right, and we encounter people who don't even care if they're right. They just want the world according to them and impose and inflict that on other people. How much are we being asked to forgive? I mean, there's some really, really heinous things that happen in the world today. They're happening throughout history, right? Really, really horrible, bad stuff. Some would say, I'm being asked to forgive more than I've been forgiven. Jesus encountered people in his ministry who didn't think they'd been forgiven that much at all. And they had lots of issues with him. And Jesus simply said, if you're not sick, you don't need a doctor. If you have nothing to be forgiven for, then you don't need my forgiveness. But you get the sense in those conversations that Jesus had that maybe he wasn't fully on board with their self-diagnosis. How much am I being asked to forgive? How much have I been forgiven? The question that Jesus' story raises, though, is what kingdom are we talking about? If we're only dealing with our kingdom of earth ledger, you may have a case. You may have a case that you have been hurt far more than you've hurt others. Because terrible things have happened. If we're only talking about our kingdom of earth ledger, but how does Jesus start this story? The kingdom of heaven is like. He's not talking about earthly ledgers here. He's talking about the kingdom of heaven ledger. Well, what does that mean? In Luke chapter 12, Jesus says, "There is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known. What you have said in the dark will be heard in the daylight. What you have whispered in the ear in the inner rooms will be proclaimed from the roofs." Think about that for a second. Everything you've ever said, everything you've ever whispered under your breath, every thought that you've ever had and played out in vengeance or in whatever, right? Put up on a screen for the whole world to see. John Gruden, right, the former coach of the Las Vegas Raiders now, had that kind of experience a couple weeks ago when some of his emails were released and there was horrible racist comments in there, right? Things that were not supposed to be told to the world. And I look at that and I'm thinking, that's horrible. Those things are terrible. And I think also, man, I hope no one ever goes through all of my emails and all of my texts and puts that out for everyone to see, or even the things that I would never put in writing, right? Jesus goes on to say in Luke chapter 12 that there is a fate worse than death. "I tell you, my friends, do not be afraid of those who kill the body, and after that can do no more." There are people that hurt you. There are bad people. But I will show you. He says, don't fear them. There's only so much they can do. There's only so much harm they can cause you. They can take your life. But that's the limit. I will show you whom you should fear. Fear him who, after your body has been killed, has authority to throw you into hell. I tell you, fear him. The psalmist says, "There is no one who is righteous, not even one. There was no one who understands, no one who seeks God." Paul sums it up this way: "All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God." The glory of God. You were created in the image and likeness of God to be a reflection of his life, his light, his love, his glory, his majesty. People were supposed to look at you and see an image of the Creator. Is that what we see when we look at one another? All of us. Not just a little short, right? To me, it always comes back to when I'm feeling like, you know what, I'm not perfect, but I'm not that bad. This question: if the cross is the solution, If the cross is the solution, how bad must the problem be? If Jesus had to die to cover my sin, is it really just like a little thing that we could dust up and clear away? The cross is the solution. Jesus is saying in this parable that if the kingdom of heaven is your residence, Jesus announced it. He proclaimed it. The kingdom of heaven is upon you. When you become his student, you're his disciple, you are now entering into his kingdom. When we pray, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth in my life, and we're praying his kingdom, welcoming his kingdom over our domain. If the kingdom of heaven is your residence, the king of heaven is your monarch. The king of heaven is your ruler. By definition, a king is where the will of the king is carried out. You belong to his kingdom, you live under his rule, then you carry out and live into his sovereign reign. Forgive, because that's who God is, because that's what God does, because that's the way his kingdom works. Jesus said, love your enemies, that you may be the sons and daughters of your Father in heaven. He causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. God treats evil people with grace. He is just. He is just. Because he's just, that's why Jesus had to die. Because he is also merciful. He extends his grace by allowing his son to pay the price to cover our sins so that we could be forgiven, right? It's not just like wipe the slate clean. Somebody had to pay. Jesus paid that we might be forgiven. Because we're forgiven now, then we are able to, called to, extend that to others. Following God's lead is the only path to peace in a world where nobody is perfect. Forgiveness is the only path to peace in a world where no one is perfect. I want you to, in response to this message this morning, I want you to wrestle with two questions, right? And I don't want you just to ask yourself. I want you to do what Peter does in this passage. I want you to ask Jesus, Teacher, how much debt have I been forgiven on heaven's ledger? Jesus, how much debt do I have on heaven's ledger that you have erased? The psalmist prayed, search me, O God, know my heart, test me, know my anxious thoughts, see if there is any offensive way in me. God, open up my heart from your eyes and allow me to see what you see prior to the cross, and allow me to see how much I've been forgiven in your ledger. And then believe, because some of us have a difficult time with this part of it. Believe that it has been forgiven. That it really is. The slate is clean. That Jesus has wiped out your debt. Teacher, how much debt have I been forgiven? And then follow that with the second question. Teacher, who do I need to forgive? Teacher, who do I need to forgive? And sit. And I have a pretty strong sense that something's going to happen when you pray these prayers. Things are going to start popping into your head. And people are going to start popping into your head. And you're probably not going to hear the voice of God say, Danny, forgive Danny. Thanks for sitting up front, Danny, so I could pick on you this morning. But Danny's mind is the name is going to come to mind. No, not that. You can't mean that God. Yeah. When those things come to mind, God is answering your prayer. When those situations and those people, and you might have forgotten about it, or you might think, oh, that's not even that, I don't really need to forgive them because it's not that big a deal. And those names pop up, something's going on there that needs to be acted on. Jesus, how much do I need to be forgiven? How much have I been forgiven? Who do I need to forgive? Lord, I pray that, just first of all, thank you. Thank you that you know us as we are, 100%. Nothing's been hidden. Nothing's been overlooked. You know our whole story. See the whole story. And covered the whole story with your grace. That when we are in Christ, when we enter into your kingdom, that the slate is cleaned and we are forgiven. And I pray, Lord, that your Spirit would work in our hearts, that we might become more and more people of peace. People who make peace because we extend the forgiveness that's been given to us and offer it to other people. Mercy, kindness, love. That we might be people in a world where everyone is yelling and screaming and moving to their corners. That we might be people who crossed the threshold, where you took an initiative to restore our relationship with you, that we might be people who take the initiative to restore and reconcile relationships with others. Jesus, your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. I pray in Jesus' name.